never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Fine.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Well, it is a Friday, so of course that means today I'm going to be previewing some of the big games coming up tomorrow in the world of college football. But before I get into that, let me first say that if you are a football fan in general, whether it is college or the NFL, it is the time of the year where you can officially get excited, because starting last night with the football games we had last night, there is now some kind of football on for the next 27 days, because this upcoming Tuesday is when the MAC conference has their Tuesday night game. It's only one per week, but it's a game on a Tuesday night. So around this area, we call it Tuesday night Maction. So with that going on now, there's 27 consecutive days of some kind of football, whether it's college or the NFL. The next day that there is no football on is Wednesday, November 23rd. So you've got 27 straight days of some kind of football on. And my New Orleans Pelicans are off to a 3-1 start on the season. They defeated the Dallas Mavericks on Tuesday night in the first game of the NBA on TNT doubleheader without Brandon Ingram and without Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson is questionable tonight. Brandon Ingram is out for at least the next 3 games. They definitely need Zion back with Brandon being out, because they play the Suns tonight, and we know how good the Suns are. And our first playoff poll for this year in college football comes out on Tuesday night. It'll be interesting to see who is number one. And the reason why we always have so much controversy in these polls is because there are 2 types of voters. So in this room, when you have all these people voting on who goes where, you have the 2 worlds colliding, because you have the one side that strictly goes by your resume, which I've never understood that, because you can't help who you play. And just because the teams you play suck doesn't mean that you suck. But you have about half of the people who watch football that go strictly by your resume. If the teams you play suck, automatically, for some reason, they're dumb enough to think that you suck. Even though that could not be farther from the truth, people still believe that. And then you have the other side, which is the category that I would fall in if I was a voter. And that is, you sit back and you watch the teams play, and it does not matter who they play. You can watch them and determine how good they are based on how they play, because there's more than just who you play that factors into how good you are. It's who you play, when you play them, where you play them, how you play them, the style, the schemes, the matchup, the coaching. All that stuff goes into it. So it's not just, well, they played so-and-so and they suck, so they suck. But you'd be surprised at how many people actually vote that way. They don't watch your games, probably couldn't name 5 people on your team, but since who you play sucks, you suck too. And I've never understood that because I've never been able to do that. I can't just say a team sucks because I think they suck. I actually have to watch them and determine how good or bad they are based on how I seen them play. The other team that they play does not matter. But we had a weird game last night because we had NC State and Virginia Tech. And we almost had the first game of the season that went into the half 0-0. But with 5 seconds to go in the first half, NC State kicks a field goal and goes up 3-0. So it looked like the first team to 10 was going to win the game. But the third quarter was all the turkeys. They were actually up 21-3, and NC State scored a touchdown with right around 2 minutes to go in the third quarter to make it 21-10. And then the fourth quarter was all Wolfpack. They scored 2 more touchdowns to win the game 22-21. And I know I've talked all year long about injuries, and honestly, it doesn't matter who you pull for. You can look up and down any team's roster, and every team in America has a couple of players that are out hurt, whether they're running backs, wide receivers, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, a safety, a linebacker, a kicker, somebody. There's no team in America that doesn't have an injury. It happens every year. It's never going to change. But there's a big difference in losing a offensive lineman or losing a running back and losing a quarterback, because the quarterback is the leader of the team. And that's who NC State's lost, and they've lost Devin Leary for the season. And there's no way they beat Wake Forest or North Carolina without Devin Leary. So they're probably going to finish 8-4, and that's a travesty. So we'll never know how good they could actually be this year. They lost to Syracuse 2 weeks ago without Devin Leary. No doubt in anybody's mind they would have beaten Syracuse if they had Devin Leary, but injuries happen. There's nothing you can do about it. It happens to every team every year. Coming up tomorrow, we have at noon Ohio State and Penn State. Now, Ohio State is 9 for 9 this year on fourth down. I believe the only other team in America that has a perfect percentage when going for it on fourth down is Georgia, and I believe Georgia is 6 for 6. So since Ohio State goes for it so much and they're so successful at it, maybe they'll go for it a couple of times tomorrow and not get it and allow Penn State to stay in the game. But at last check on Wednesday night, Ohio State is about a 2-touchdown favorite in this game. The only thing that should give Penn State hope is that when they played Michigan a couple of weeks back, they got absolutely destroyed. And even though Penn State's record against ranked teams is, I believe, 1-20 since the year 2000, which is pitiful, they normally don't get beat the way they got beat by Michigan. They usually lose by 3 points, 10 points, 7 points, something like that. And the last time they got beat that bad by a ranked team was 2016. And their very next game, they pulled off an upset. So I expect Penn State to be ready, but I think Ohio State's just a better team. Also at noon tomorrow, we have TCU at West Virginia. It'll be fun to see whether or not TCU can keep their undefeated streak alive. The game is in West Virginia, so that should allow the Mountaineers to stay close. But I think TCU is a better team in that one as well. We also have Notre Dame at Syracuse, and with that awesome, amazing Syracuse top 10 defense, Notre Dame might not score 13 points. And we also have Georgia Tech at Florida State at noon tomorrow. Then at 3:30 we have Florida at Georgia. Of course, this game is played every year on Halloween weekend at 3:30 on CBS. And Kirby Smart is continuing to pretty much say this game should no longer be in Jacksonville. I'm assuming he wants it to be just a regular game where one year it's Athens, one year it's Gainesville, but he wants it moved, and I hate it because he's pretty much whined about this since he got the job as the Georgia head coach. But the longtime college football fans are all about tradition, and this is a tradition that Kirby Smart is trying to do away with. And Georgia historian Lauren Smith, and if you follow Georgia football, you know who Lauren Smith is. But Lauren Smith said that games like this happened all the time back in the day because back in the day, the stadiums just didn't have the capacity they have now. You know, now these big time teams, their stadium holds 85,000, 90,000, 100,000. Well, back 85, 90 years ago, the stadiums only held 12,000 people, 15,000 people. So Lauren Smith says that it started because Georgia and Florida being so close in proximity, there was too many people that wanted to go to the game, and neither team's stadium was near big enough, so they found a location that was pretty much right in between and started playing there. And this game's been held in Jacksonville every year since 1933, with only about 4 exceptions. But I hate to see it leave Jacksonville. Hopefully it'll stay in Jacksonville. We'll have to wait and see. I believe the contract runs out in 2023, so it may change coming up next year. We also have Oklahoma State and Kansas State tomorrow at 3:30, and we have what's probably going to be the most boring football game in the history of mankind at 3:30 tomorrow, and that is the pitiful offense of Northwestern against the pitiful offense of Iowa. Then at 4 o'clock tomorrow, we have the battle of the Columbias in the SEC when the Columbia, Missouri Tigers take on the Columbia, South Carolina Gamecocks. And this year's game is in Columbia, South Carolina, and I expect South Carolina to win the game. The only thing about South Carolina that's been interesting this year is the fact that they brought in Spencer Rattler and made it seem like they were going to be a passing team and just let Rattler do his thing, but their offense has been all Marshawn Lloyd. I haven't seen Spencer Rattler do anything. They pretty much ran the same offense this year that they run last year. There's no difference in it except for a different quarterback. But I don't think Spencer Rattler went there to turn and give the ball to Marshawn Lloyd 25 times a game. 7 o'clock tomorrow night, we have Kentucky at Tennessee. Now, this game, I believe, was 2020, the year that Kentucky won the game like 34-7, I think it was. But outside of that year, this game is usually right down to the wire every single year. Looking on paper this year, Tennessee is easily the better team. The only reason I think Kentucky keeps it close is because I know all coaches say, well, the next game is the biggest game on the schedule. Every coach in America says that. But you're not going to convince me that Josh Heupel has convinced his team that Kentucky is the biggest game of the season when Tennessee knows they've got Georgia coming up next weekend. He can preach it all he wants to in practice, and he can tell you that all he wants to, but there's no way you're going to convince me that Tennessee is all in on Kentucky and being focused on Kentucky when they've got Georgia coming up in 1 week, and they know if they beat Georgia, unless they just fall apart after that, they're going to be a playoff team. And if they lose to Georgia, they're probably not going to be a playoff team. So I think with Georgia coming up next weekend, I believe that Kentucky is going to stay in this game. And you're talking about 2 completely opposite sides of the spectrum on offense. Kentucky is the slowest offensive team in America. They run fewer plays per game than any team in America, and Tennessee is second in America in being the fastest team. And by the way, if you don't know who the fastest team is, that would be the Red Raiders of Texas Tech, who average 105 plays per game. So you have the Kentucky offense is going to be as slow as possible against the Tennessee offense is going to be as fast as possible. So if Kentucky can have 10, 11-minute drives, they may get the Vol offense out of rhythm because you can't get into rhythm when you're on the sidelines. Then at 7:30 tomorrow night, we have a game that's supposed to be a rivalry, but one team's just not any good, and that is Michigan State at Michigan. And we also have 7:30 tomorrow night, Ole Miss and Texas A&M. And I know I'm always bashing on Jimbo Fisher because, in my opinion, Jimbo Fisher is an absolute clown. But let's compare resumes of the last Texas A&M coach and the current Texas A&M coach. The last Texas A&M coach we know was Kevin Sumlin. And through 55 games at Texas A&M, Kevin Sumlin was 39-16. Through 55 games at Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher is 37-18. Kevin Sumlin made $5 million a year. Jimbo Fisher makes $9.5 million a year. So you paid a coach $5 million. You ran him off. You brought in the next coach. You pretty much doubled his salary, and you're 2 games worse. So you've made absolutely no progress. The thing that I find the funniest about the whole thing is, have you ever had a girl that you knew dated somebody, and she done the guy so dirty? And she used him for every drop of money he had, every ounce of change he had, and treated that man like absolute, complete, total, utter garbage. And then he put up with it because he thought he was in love, and she took every dime he had, every penny he had, and then they break up. He talks about how bad she is and how she done him so dirty. And then about 2 weeks later, you've got a friend that wants to date the girl, and you tell your friend how bad she is, what she's going to do. Your friend doesn't listen. He dates her anyway. And of course, it's the same thing all over again. Then he comes to you a year later and says, man, I just can't believe she done me that way. Well, this is pretty much the same situation with Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. If you look at Florida State, the longer he stayed there, the worse they got. He's been gone now for about 5 years, and they are just now recovering from the ditch that Jimbo Fisher put them in. And then for some stupid, idiotic, moronic reason, Texas A&M goes out and hires him, and now they're slowly but surely going off the same cliff. I don't know who in the world at Texas A&M thought it was a good idea to hire Jimbo Fisher, but now they're going backwards. And even though his buyout is way up there, he won't get fired this year, but don't be surprised if he starts next year on the hot seat. And if and when he gets fired, if any other program in America, at least a Power 5 program, if they're dumb enough to hire Jimbo Fisher, their AD should be fired on the spot. The man has ran 2 programs in the ground. And what's going to happen in the offseason is a lot of their players are going to transfer. Because, yes, they're making a lot of money to play there, but players want to win. They're not winning. And people can see that Jimbo Fisher is an absolute buffoon. He's an absolute clown. And especially the quarterbacks. You look, he's got 14 quarterbacks on his roster, and almost every one of them is a 5-star, but they all suck. That should tell you it's not the quarterbacks, it's the system. It's Jimbo Fisher. And if any of these quarterbacks want to go to the NFL, you are not upgrading your draft stock by playing for a coach who has absolutely no clue what he's doing. 8 o'clock tomorrow night, we have Pittsburgh at North Carolina. Of course, this game means something because these teams are probably the best two teams on the coastal side of the ACC. Of course, North Carolina right now only has the one loss on the season. So it should be a good game. We have Pittsburgh's really good defense against North Carolina's really good offense. And North Carolina does not play any defense at all. But Pittsburgh's offense is so average, it really shouldn't matter in this game. Any thoughts on any of the games, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What do you call a girl in the middle of a tennis court? A net. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.